Tom Belloli. Tom, your dad was an integral part of the MSU St. Louis soccer connections. Back in the early 60s, I think you were playing with a club team here in St. Louis, Cutest Juniors. Your dad was coaching, and I think maybe Tommy Kreft's dad was helping him coach there, right?
And a gentleman named Harry Sunder.
All right, Harry Sunder. And so how did your dad meet Gene Kenny, who was the soccer coach at Michigan State?
Well, after the first four of us went to Michigan State from St. Louis, my dad was a firefighter in St. Louis, and he would always arrange his days off to come up to watch the games. And so in coming up to the game, after Gene saw and had experience with the four of us, he said, "Hey Ed, I'll pay for your wife and you to come up if you'll bring some recruits up." A little different than the way it is now. And so he put them up at Kellogg Center, if you remember that, and started wining and dining my dad with rum and free t-shirts and sweatshirts and stuff. And so my dad would have done just about anything for him at that time. And my dad had a great pulse, of course, from coaching all those years here in St. Louis of the players and who would come. In fact, it was really neat tonight. Johnny Houska came up to me, and I wish my dad was here. Excuse me. But Johnny said, he said, "I remember, I can still see your dad and Gene Kenny sitting in my living room talking about coming to Michigan State." And he said, "I like Coach Kenny, but I was impressed with your dad." And he said, "Your dad was such a Spartan after we came here." And my dad saw it as such a great opportunity to come from St. Louis, where he never had a chance to go to school, to come to Michigan State. And all of you know, when you come to Michigan State as a recruit, and you look at all of the facilities and everything that were there, it was pretty impressive. And so my dad thought it was an opportunity of a lifetime, an opportunity for all of us, and he could help more of us get there.
Tom Kreft, one question for you. Who holds the most assists in MSU soccer history, do you know?
Second. There's only one. I used to bounce the ball off a guy's foot so he could score goals. I had to make sure I hit it off his right foot because he couldn't score with his left. Oh, Willie says that's not true. His wife. You know that's true, guy. I had to do it when he was playing for Cutest Juniors too, because he couldn't score with that foot either. I do. To follow up with what Tom said, I played for the Cutest Junior team too, but I was a year behind him, so I followed those guys up because Ed recruited me too.
Who was in that first group, Tom?
Tom was, Guy was,
Busch.
Gary McBrady, and Rick Noelke.
Right here.
Up front. Those four guys went up. Kevin O'Connell was the keeper on the Cutest Junior team. He went to St. Louis U, and then he found the light and followed it. Came up with me the next year, but he had to sit out a year. And then I came along with Joe, Barry, and Terry the next year. And then the kids came, John Houska.
The kids.
And Buzzy. That's what I said.
John, you had kind of an interesting path to MSU, and I talked to all of you guys a couple of times on the phone and by email. I should be a historian for you. I've heard a lot of stories about all of you, but you graduated from DeAndrews, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then you went to work, right?
With the Army, I went to work.
You went?
I
I went in the Army for 6 months, then I went to work. I worked for a telephone company.
All right, so you're working for the telephone company. How do you get from working at a fairly good paid job to go back to school? What's up with that?
I went with a bunch of my friends. We went up to visit Kevin O'Connell, just to have a drinking weekend. And he asked me if I wanted to come up and play soccer up there. I told him I couldn't afford it. The next thing I know, I was getting a letter from Gene Kenny, wanted me to come up and try out. And they offered me a scholarship, and there I was.
Well, tell us, what did a scholarship in those days, what did it consist of?
Books and tuition.
So you go up to party and you come home with a scholarship, you pack your bags and you go back. That's a good deal. I like it.
Gary, so Gary went to St. Louis U High, another fellow St. Louis U High alum. How was the SLU High team back then? How were you guys?
Our senior year, they had a pretty good record, like 16-3. So, playing with every down, or for every down. The only reason I went to Michigan State, I can say it now, is Guy Busch promised to do my laundry all the time, and he lied.
That was the only reason? Huh? Any other thing for you in regards to the experience at Michigan State?
I don't know if we're going to get to see this because it's such a grainy copy, but I brought a CD, which is a transfer of a tape from the '67 final at Busch U. So if we get to see, you can barely see it, but it's, you know, and if Guy wouldn't have knocked himself out on the goalpost, it probably would still be playing.
Denis Boles. Denny, you chose to enter the College of Engineering at Michigan State, which is not an easy path. It's not an easy degree. So what was academic life like for you guys? You heard David talk a little bit earlier about the order in which today's players and their coaches put academics. What was it like for you?
Well, it was a little tougher for me. Luckily, Nick Archer and I were in Wonders dormitory. All the other guys were in Case. So we got to study. When we went over there was no studying going on. And I'm sorry about that. But anyway, we survived it, and I got into it.
Kurt.
Well, it was good. Nick and I, as a matter of fact, Nick and I were sweet mates with the RA, and he tried to make our floor into like an academic floor. It was a 4, we were North Wonders and we were 4 East, and I don't know, we had some pretty smart guys on our floor to help me with my math homework and chemistry and all that other stuff. Now Nick was majoring in criminal justice for a while, and then he ended up going to phys ed. But anyway, we worked. Nick and I would study hard, and we survived it. Otherwise, probably wouldn't have done it. I got a story about Nick. He ended up at Michigan State because one day he and this other guy named Chuck Magnus were standing on the corner of our neighborhood on a Saturday, and he said, neither one of them had any plans for that next fall. They graduated from high school, didn't know what they were going to do. They said, let's go enlist in the Army. So they went all the way downtown to the recruiting center. They were going to enlist. It was Saturday. It was closed. Next week, Mr. Belloli called with a scholarship. And Nick and I ended up being roommates for pretty much 4 years. Yeah.
Great story. You know, it's interesting, I look around and see some of the younger alumni and their heads nodding, because the dormitory structures at Michigan State as they are today are pretty much exactly the same as they were, except for the fact that the Brody complex has now just turned into this absolute wonderland with a cafeteria that if you haven't been there, you better go. but really pretty much the same, so it's kind of neat to see them nodding their head. Yeah. Kevin, where's Kevin Boles? There, I'm on the wrong side here for Kevin. So Kevin, you end up with your brother up at Michigan State. Both of you are on scholarships, right? Both recruited at the same time or not?
No, Denny was before us.
So you get up there, big brothers up there, right? So was it Denny that took you under his wing or somebody else?
Kevin O'Connell.
No, Connell did it. Denny's probably, what was the deal between you and Denny? What what really was that? Was that like a typical brother relationship?
No, not at all. It was like oil and water.
That's pretty funny. Well, that's good. So what kind of, a lot of you guys, including you and your brother, have had postgraduate careers in soccer. Can you tell us a little bit about yours, the stuff that you've been doing?
Well, I was in business for about 25 years with a construction company. I'm very successful, and I was able to help Michigan State in a lot of things that I did. And, I'm an affiliate with Zensen, and I'm also affiliate with the University of Raleigh. But they that dormitory burned down, but the kids got killed down there. I went down and got that all cleaned up, took care of all that. So I've got stuff like that. Been very successful in business.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Buzzy, what's going on?
There's Buzz.
I had a game this evening. I coached girls high school, boys high school, under 11 boys.
So Buzz, after Michigan State, you had one of the more accomplished careers in playing. Can you talk about your soccer experiences playing after Michigan State and maybe what playing at Michigan State kind of helped translate to that career?
Well, when I was going to Michigan State, they had the tryouts for the 72 Olympics, and I was lucky enough to make that team. And when the Olympics were over, this was in Munich, Denmark Kramer was an assistant coach with that team. He's a national FIFA coach. And I asked him if he'd get me on a team over in Germany. I played in Eintracht Frankfurt for a year. Enjoyed it immensely, just got lonely, didn't speak the language. All the Germans could speak English, but they wouldn't speak English in front of me. I was out to take their job. So I came back after a year, played with the St. Louis Stars, was traded out to San Jose Earthquakes, where my brother was drafted. He went to St. Louis University, and we played together for a number of years out there. Got married. My oldest son was born out there. At the end of my career there, I went into the indoor season and played with the Cincinnati kids who folded, moved to Detroit, played there a year. They folded, moved to San Francisco, played there for a year. They folded, moved to Kansas City. And I told my wife I'd retire then because she had 3 small children. I had twins, and she would travel by herself on airlines with 2-year-old and twins. So it got a bit rough for her, so I decided to give up and just went into coaching after that.
Like I said, post-career, a lot of post-career soccer.
Very, very, very much.
So Guy, Kreft says you got all the press during the program's championship years, and looking at the memoirs that he sent out, a number of which Gooner put up back here. Nice job. And those are really nice, man. He's telling the truth. So what's up with that?
Well, I thought I was going to talk about me for a minute. Some of you that's maybe wondering a little bit, how did this happen that so many guys from St. Louis got a chance to go to Michigan State? How did it happen? You had to understand the Catholic school system here in St. Louis. If you didn't grow up here, there was a league and structure, and we came through, all of us here, at a very good time, and we were just born at the right time, basically. And St. Louis had an unusual advantage over the rest of the country because there were so many great coaches, and there was a structure for a league, the Catholic schools playing against each other. And that's what it led to. And basically, Michigan State, for 2 or 3 years in a row, could never quite get over the hump. And St. Louis University was at the top of the game here. And Gene got the light and said, well, I think I'll go get some kids from St. Louis and bring them to Michigan State. And really what it did was open the door for a number of us. It changed our lives. I mean, the soccer back then, this was not a suburban game and mom was taking you in a minivan. This was, you rode your bike to practice, you played in the schoolyard. This was a city game. And everybody here in this group fits that mold. I mean, we weren't going to Chaminade and places like that. I mean, we were city kids. You had to understand that. Well, I think it's important you understand how it happened. I mean, Kenny finally said, Coach Kenny at that time, I'm going to get some guys from St. Louis so I can compete more with St. Louis, because they had won like 5 or 6 NCAAs in a row. That's the fact.
Do any of you guys know how many universities in the Midwest were giving scholarships at that time? Bowling Green, maybe? McMurray? SLU wasn't, right? Akron? Interesting thing. Yeah, we're going to touch on that a little bit more in a minute. But before we do that, Gunnar, I think we got a picture of student life for the athletes at Michigan State, don't we? Yeah. Let's take a look at this picture, and I hope you can see it clearly. I looked at this picture and I thought, you know what, things haven't changed much, except for one thing. I noticed that every one of these cans and bottles of beer is a Budweiser. And to my memory, and I was at the same school at the same time you were, it was Black Label. So I figured this has something to do with, Budweiser has something to do with St. Louis. So, in the left of the picture, there is a piece of blue line hanging on the wall that you can't see, but it says, win next week. Tom, do you know what game that was?
I don't.
Where were you guys? Could have. Piece of blue line, I thought that was pretty cool. John Houska. Where's John? There he is. John, you came in as a freshman after most of these guys were established at MSU, right? Those guys there.
Well, I think it was probably the reason I went there was guys like Gary McBrady and got into Tommy Kreft, and I remember Mickey Gold, Joe Baum. I remember Joe. I wouldn't say that.
Yeah. But here's the important thing. I think it was Kehoe here in St. Louis that said about you as a team that he'd never seen a college team as good before, and he's never seen one since. So as a unit, no matter how you were as individuals, as a unit, you were stunning on the field. Rich, now, where are you, Rich? Up here, there he is. Rich, because there were no Big Ten varsity soccer teams in the 60s, you guys played in the Midwestern League, is that right?
I don't know. I really don't. I couldn't answer that. I don't know.
Do you remember the teams you played?
No. No, I remember playing the academies and the, obviously St. Louis.
Because Nick Archer chose to stay.
Yeah, Nick couldn't be here. He had knee surgery from an old soccer injury, and he can't travel. He's had an infection or something. But he should be here. What he did basically was Joe was talking about giving back to the game. He settled in East Lansing, took a teaching job, and started the East Lansing High School soccer program from nothing. And there were only like 5 public schools in the state that had soccer in 1971 or 2. He started the program there, and to play his games, they had to drive to Detroit or all over the place. And he was one of the first coaches that got high school soccer on the map and grew it and grew it and grew it. And he's still coaching the the boys soccer team there. You know, along the way, he won 3 state championships, at least 4. He started the girls program sometime in the 80s. They also won some championships. It's too bad he can't be here because he's a guy from North St. Louis, basic roots that almost joined the Army. I didn't know that story. And he's back, and he now has, in East Lansing, there's an East Lansing soccer complex, and the fields are named after him. Yeah, he's a heck of a guy, and arguably the best high school coach Michigan's ever seen. And that's what I want to say about Nick. I just want to say one more thing, and bear with me. This is about Joe Baum, 33 years at Michigan State, okay? You have to understand where the program was when I had the opportunity to go there and when all of us did. It was scholarships, it was air travel, it was staying in really nice hotels for road trips. I mean, all the non-revenue sports at Michigan State in the 60s were thriving because the football team was winning, they had a great athletic director, and the money was there to support it all. That all changed in 1970 with Title IX and women's sports, which is a good thing. I have 2 daughters, I'm all for it, believe me. But the economic impact that had on the non-revenue sports that were competing nationally, like soccer, wrestling, and gymnastics, which no longer exists at Michigan, it had an impact. And Joe came in 76, and when he arrived, the program had gone from when we were eating steak dinners on our trips. It was really good stuff when we were there. I mean, we traveled like the teams travel today, but when he got there, there were no scholarships left in the budget for soccer. His budget was roughly $7,000 for the year. And he made a commitment and said, wait a minute, this was big when I was there, I'm going to bring it back. And he did bring it back ever so slowly. And, you know, thank God for George Perlis, who gave him the first scholarship. You know, I lived in the East Lansing area, and Joe, and I watched this develop. And ever so slowly it's come back. But it wasn't, I mean, what we had in the 60s went away. And not just in soccer, a lot of the non-revenue sports really, there just wasn't enough money. But it's come back, they have great leadership there now. Joe's passed the ball to Damon. We have a beautiful soccer complex now at Michigan State. You know, the tradition is there. But you have to understand what happened to it and how it got back to where it is now. And Joe deserves a heck of, I mean, 33 years of his life went into building it back to what it was when we got a chance to go there. So you got to understand that history. It hasn't always been that way, and that's the point I'm trying to make.
Like I said, Joe, 33 years of soccer service to Michigan State University. And as far as I'm concerned, St. Louis Spartans, I know you agree with me. We welcome you home with open arms. We hope that we see you for many years to come. Those of you that are no longer in St. Louis, you're always welcome here. And also in the MSU family all over the country, wherever you are. Really?
Because I've been a part of this soccer program since I married my husband in 1963. There's quite a few of these soccer players that are actually in the St. Louis Soccer Hall of Fame also. And I think they should stand up.
Stand up, the Hall of Famers. Hall of Famers, will you guys stand up? It's on your bios, but you really are. Congratulations. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. So I think we're gonna move on, but once again, just thank to all of you. A lot of us younger guys wouldn't have the opportunities that we have today. Certainly my wife and 2 kids wouldn't be able to have a career without the path that you guys all forged. So from the bottom of all of our hearts, sincerely thank you very much for what you guys have done.